Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, the official podcast of Neo Tokyo.
Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Today we have the main man, the legend, Mr. Jihoz. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, it's a real pleasure. And as always, it is my esteemed pleasure to be co-hosting alongside the greatest co-host of all time, the jiu-jitsu legend himself, the main man, Mr. Cryptoetheus. What's up, my guy?
Dude, stoked to be here. The Ronin ecosystem was like an important part of me getting into crypto in the first place. I think from within 10 days of buying my first Bitcoin, I was bridging over to Ronin so I could get into the Axie ecosystem. So I sort of started out there. So super stoked to, now, I guess 4 or 5 years later, 4 years later, diving into it on the pod with you is great.
Yeah, so let's dive in. Maybe you could just give like a for those who've been living under a rock and don't know about, what you guys have built so far. Maybe just give us like a 2 minute speed run on the history of Ronin, of Axie, like Sky Mavis, all the things you guys are building.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jeff, also known as Jiho. I'm a co-founder of Sky Mavis. We're the inventors of Axie and Ronin. So Axie was initially started out in 2018. It's kind of like Pokemon or Tamagotchi, these cute creatures that you can battle, you collect them, you can breed them. And we initially built Axie to be able to introduce people to crypto through something that was fun, relatable, and reminded them of childhood, right? Because if you can mix the future with nostalgia, that's typically where a lot of interesting education happens. And that's kind of our philosophy on onboarding people to Web3. While we were building Axie, we encountered a lot of problems. It was really hard to build a Web3 game because building games is hard, and then trying to integrate crypto into them is even harder. So we were kind of just solving a couple of different problems simultaneously. But typically, as an entrepreneur, if you're doing something super hard that nobody's done before, it's one of the actual requirements of inventing something, right? So we built Axie initially and had to build a lot of tools and realized that a lot of the stuff that we needed didn't exist yet. And that's basically what Ronin was designed to be, right? Ronin is a gaming chain, but it's more than that. It's a vertically integrated suite of tools that makes it super easy to build a Web3 game. So Ronin is a chain, but it also comes with a wallet that's specifically built for games, an NFT marketplace that's specifically built for games, a decentralized exchange that's specifically built for games. So all of these things specifically built for games. Axie is the #1 NFT project by all-time volume. It's in the Guinness Book of World freaking Records.
Whoa.
Yeah, Ronin is king of the gaming chains. Around 600,000 daily active addresses on the Ronin chain, 1.8 million monthly active addresses on the Ronin chain, 17 million all-time Ronin wallet downloads. So yeah, we've actually onboarded millions to crypto. Everyone else just puts that on their website.
Huh. So maybe let's kind of tackle um what I think is probably the most important thing um when it comes to thinking about this industry and gaming and just all of it, which is like why gaming? I've been a gamer since I was like freaking 6 years old, so I'm bullish gaming. I think I'm probably a little bit biased to how bullish gaming I am, but like, why are you guys bullish gaming? Why do you think gaming's the way? Like, why was that the bet?
So the first thing I ever did on the internet was play StarCraft with my friends, with my cousins in Korea. So from an early age, I knew that, or I had this understanding that gaming was a great way to introduce people to new technologies. And crypto, it can be scary, it can even be boring. It's one of the things that's like simultaneously scary and boring. And for us, right, gaming and collectibles is something that's fun. It's something that speaks to our hobbies and our interests. And so that's what onboarded us, right? So I knew about Bitcoin. I believed that Bitcoin would go up. I never got interested in Bitcoin and using it. I already knew how to make money. I was into Tesla. I believe that stocks would go up for a lot of the same reasons that crypto would go up, right? Because as fiat gets debased, anything that's real, farmland, equities, crypto, all the precious metals, all these things would go up. So for me, it wasn't until I found out that could be about gaming and collectibles that it spoke to me. And we thought that, hey, there are so many gamers in the world, so many collectors in the world. Maybe this is the way, right, to onboard a large portion of the planet to crypto. Most humans aren't like the people that are like, oh, understand that the governments are in debt, understand that their currency is being inflated away, and they might not care, right? But for us, if we could create a fun way to hook people's attention, get them interested in crypto, and then bring them down the rabbit hole, and then maybe even teach them about some of the problems that are happening in the world, to us, that sounded like a workable solution.
And yeah, I do think that there's a lot to be said for the fact that gaming already has massive like global population penetration. I think according to the last statistics that I read, about 60%, 60% of the internet connected world plays games, from your, soccer moms playing Candy Crush, or football internationally speaking, soccer moms playing Candy Crush, to like your hardcore PC gamers with the RTX Infinity 90, and they're just grinding out for 25 hours a day. I guess the question is then, why blockchain, or why crypto? Where does gaming X blockchain or gaming X crypto, like, why is that important? What was the thesis there?
There are billions of gamers in the world, and gamers are already familiar with in-game currencies and these virtual economies. For me, I, was already playing to earn for many years with Diablo, with World of Warcraft, and I was dealing with lots of issues. If I wanted to sell my WoW character, my Diablo stuff, I was having to either use like these third-party sites that were taking huge markup fees, or right, I was at risk of being banned, or I was like going to meet people in public to perform these transactions. I remember as a kid going with my mom to the mall to meet people in the food court. And I mean, like, I kind of did it in a safe way where I asked my mom to come, but kids are literally were in danger. So for us, and it's also just a capitalist thing, right? Like, to me, Web 2 gaming, right? You don't own your stuff. You can be banned. You can lose everything. There's no open markets. So from a capitalist standpoint, it just made sense where, if you give people ownership and free markets and create capitalist economies related to these games, that's going to be a superior system.
Yeah, and like to shift from why gaming to like how gaming. So if you're making a blockchain specifically for gaming, how does that differ from some of the other blockchains that were available at the time, or some of the blockchains that are available now that are more multi-use?
We believe that chains need to have some initial differentiation to drive their initial usage. And you're starting to see this with things like Hyperliquid. But Axie was the original kind of app chain where you basically use one application as the go to market, gather an initial core user base, and then start to expand outward. So we expanded outward into other games outside of the Axie universe. And now, right, we've opened up the Ronin chain and are starting to see many different types of applications that are interested in building for our users come, right? So if you're in DeFi application, for example, you've been building for the same group of users for the last 4 to 5 years. And that's what we're hearing. And when these developers realize that they can actually further their brand and find a totally new user base that isn't familiar with their application by coming to Ronin, that's something that these developers want. Because if you're a serious builder, ultimately what you want to do is build products that are used by people and then introduce that product to more people over time. And that's basically what we specialize in, is helping developers find everyday people and a different set of users outside of crypto. That's kind of why, it seems sometimes like, oh, Ronin is this totally different community, right? It has its benefits, also sometimes has its drawbacks where it's like, people are like, what? Like, I didn't know that all this stuff is happening on Ronin. It's like, yeah, because literally everyday people are using Ronin. That's kind of the main demographic. It's not the same talking heads and same 2000 people that are dumping meme coins on each other on Solana.
Yeah, there's definitely this interesting dynamic of like there are the gamers and there are the investors or speculators. Or maybe those are three different camps. But then sometimes there's the overlap, but it feels like we're trying to market gaming based content to the investors and the speculators. And some of them are gamers, but they're not like your hardcore gamers. Maybe there's some whales power users. So like how are you how are you guys able to really target those gamers, and then how do you introduce them into the ecosystem with it being both a game you're introducing to, but also blockchain stuff? And maybe you can just kind of talk through.
Well, one is, we had to observe and figure out what was happening, right? So as we started to onboard people from outside of our initial community and from outside of Web3, we asked them where they came from, how they found out about Axie, right? And we saw basically two groups of users that were coming in that were totally new to Web3 gaming. One was a little bit easier to understand than expect. We were converting people who had been passive holders of cryptocurrency and had never used the technology before. People who were just using Binance and Coinbase, we were turning them into actual users of the tech. So that was a big inflow or source of new users for us. And obviously that happened by doing co-marketing and listings of our products and tokens with Binance and Coinbase. The second group, and this was a much larger group, were the friends and family members and the kind of first, second, third degree connections of our existing community. And so these are people that have never used crypto before, but they have a friend who might have told them about crypto. That friend might have been the weird person in their friend group or in their family. But when when they saw this game, they're like, okay, like I'll give this a try. Also, they're able to get started without having to put up money up front, right? We have a scholarship model where people are able to start playing the game and fall in love with the game, make some friends, download a wallet, all before having to basically be forced to buy something as their first leap of faith, right? Imagine if to join Christianity, you had to pay to join the church before you even get to step into the church. Nobody's converting into a Christian in that model, right? You go to church, you hear the pastor, you meet the community, you learn the story of Jesus, and then you start to donate to the church. So this is like, that's just an example of, right, kind of the user experience problem that crypto has, when the first thing people have to do is buy, right? Like you want to learn more about the tech, you want to meet friends, you want some value first before asking to give value yourself, right? So yeah, those are some lessons from, where have we seen everyday people coming from.
Oh yeah, well, I was gonna ask because one of things that I thought was really interesting about the Axie explosion was that SLP was being used in real life at based on at least on the headlines in restaurants, being able to get groceries. I think there's even some talk of like being able to pay utilities with SLP. Curious if like any of that stuck around, either for SLP or other tokens that are on the Ronin ecosystem, because it was one of the first outside of like Bitcoin ATMs, it was really one of the first times you heard about people in real life spending crypto to get in world items.
Yeah, I mean that's a crazy aspect of the Axie community and the Ronin community is like if you accept Ronin wallet, if you have like Ronin wallet accepted here, you can actually in certain towns and regions drive like new customers, right? And that's what we were seeing is merchants were accepting SLP last cycle because they would be able to attract new people. And we're starting to see this model evolve where, for example, we have a partnership between the Ronin wallet and something called Gcash. Gcash is like basically Cash App or Venmo of the Philippines with 80 million users. And we have a direct partnership with them. Why? Because they want to be a bridge between right the crypto world and the fiat world. And in the Philippines, for example, the crypto world is Ronin Network, right? So that's definitely what we're seeing. I expect it to increase over time. And yeah, that those are the types of stories that really differentiate us from other communities.
And Ben, did you have a question around these topics? Because then I'm going to take it in a different direction.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things that's like, I don't know if it's a dirty little secret for crypto gaming, but I think it's like kind of actually super bullish, but not for everyone. Kind of like a winner take all thing is like there are a few like really profitable games and really profitable projects within the gaming space, but it's not always clear to see. And it doesn't always get reflected in the token. So, like, for example, I was talking to, one of the largest gaming companies on planet Earth, and they're very interested in Web3. And I'm not going to disclose who they are, but like, they're very bullish. They want to come in and they want to be a first mover within Web3. They're crushing it. Some native Web3 companies, they're crushing it from a profitability perspective. And, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue and profits too. But a lot of games are struggling, and it's definitely like a feast or famine sort of thing. And one of the key things is they have figured out, the ones that are making it have figured out how to monetize all users, not just their paid users in some way, shape, or form. So maybe you can just kind of talk about like where do you see the opportunity from a profitability and like fundamental business economics perspective? What do you think it takes to get the companies in this space to actually win from an economic perspective? I know it's kind of a bunch of things. Maybe you can kind of parse through that and just kind of linger on that topic for a bit.
Well, we showed the model last cycle where Axie was generating massive amounts of fees, and that was generating a ton of traction for the Axis token. And so I still believe that that's the model. When it comes to onboarding Web 2 companies into Web 3, we have a couple of open experiments that I believe can serve as a case study. So we have this game called Ragnarok Online, which is basically like the RuneScape of Asia. And they're building on Ronin. They have an NFT powered server. If they're able to do well, and if they're able to show a workable model and basically become this case study, that will be something that we can show and that other developers will see as, okay, here's the model that works. Here's something that we can basically build on top of. But yeah, as I mentioned, it's hard to build a game. It's even harder to build a Web3 game, right? So you're basically putting two different things together, and it's complex, right? And it's hard enough to build a game. So right now, like basically Web3 gaming developers are pioneers. They're doing stuff that really hasn't been done before. And the traditional gaming companies aren't going to do that. They've never seen traditional gaming companies innovate when it comes to a new platform, right? Nintendo, the console giants and the PC giants, they weren't the ones that took over mobile gaming, right? Like, why isn't Mario the number one mobile game in the world? No, it's like Supercell games are the best mobile games, right? Like, or MiHoYo with Genshin, and right, these random Chinese and Japanese MMOs that you've never heard of that are much larger than any game that you know about, or any IP that you know about. So every single gaming paradigm has a new group of winners, and it's just like, why isn't Goldman Sachs, the largest DeFi protocol? It's the same question. It's really the same question, right? It's like, why aren't the traditional banking institutions the largest, DeFi protocols, right? It's like, obviously, yeah, it's, there's going to be a new group of entrepreneurs that understand stuff better, and the established players, they'll come in, but only once they're established playbooks that they can basically just copy, because big companies are not built for innovation, right? Like, they're built to basically do things at scale, but they're not built to move fast and invent stuff, right? You need to be small in order to do stuff like that.
And Activision eventually did get with the program and obviously bought Candy Crush. So do you suspect that we're on the precipice of that happening sort of in the DeFi and gaming space, where the big actors come in and start to scoop up some of these companies rather than copy?
Oh wait, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, no problem. So while the big like gaming giants didn't come in and like dominate the mobile space, once it had
Mm.
proved that there was an enormous amount of money there, Activision made that huge acquisition of Candy Crush. So I was just
Yeah.
curious if you suspect we're going to be heading in a similar direction with DeFi and gaming, where once the
Mhm.
giants realize that there's a lot of money to be made in here, they scoop up via acquisitions a lot of these
Yeah,
projects.
exactly, right? So they would rather acquire and buy rather than build. So that's obviously good for the teams that can, that can prove themselves in the early days of this industry. All right, so yeah, that's a great like example, right? It's like a Blizzard, rather than like trying to build their own mobile. I mean, they made Diablo Immortal, which I feel like most Blizzard people don't even consider a real game, right? So it's kind of, and they did buy Candy Crush, right? So I think like that's a helpful example, right? It's like, why wouldn't Blizzard and Nintendo, who are like the best, right? Almost like objectively like the best game makers of all time, why can't they just easily make a mobile game, right? It's a different set of skills, right? And for them, they would rather just watch and then use their capital advantage to basically selectively scoop up assets that will give them exposure to the industry.
So
Yeah,
do
and
you
one
think
thing,
that? Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry,
Go ahead,
Ben.
Nick.
No, please.
I was just gonna say, like, do you think that that's gonna happen in the Web3 space? Like, I think oftentimes the biggest sign of froth is M&A, and when big transactions are getting done. Like, do you foresee that happening in the Web3 space? And is that kind of the sign of like, okay, now we've made it, we're a real industry, there's real money sloshing around here? Like, what do you think are going to be some of the signs that like we're on the right path, or we're making it?
Here are some of the things that I would look for: people downloading crypto wallets to play games for the first time, more collector behavior. So, what we're seeing over time is that our digital lives are becoming increasingly important relative to our physical lives. That was even more apparent during COVID, where everyone was forced to be home. That's why, right, we had a huge crypto pump and Web3 gaming metaverse cycle, right? Last cycle. It was part of it was due to COVID, but people are spending more and more time inside. So I believe that COVID kind of gave us a bit of a glimpse into the future. Um, so more collector behavior, more people that are being onboarded, and I would say new economic models, right? Or a maturation of economic models, right? We talked to Hilmar, who's the CEO of Eve Online, for example, and I think they've done a really good job over the years, over the last 20 years, building like a real economy. And over time, I believe that crypto games will look more and more like EVE Online, where you have complex social relationships, you have people who are spending for emotional reasons like greed, like envy, lust, right? Basically, these are the types of emotions that will drive significant spend in these digital economies. And that basically creates this flywheel effect where people are putting an increasing amount of their capital on chain.
So I definitely think that that's going to happen too. I guess like the critical component there is people have to be emotionally bought in, and I think that's probably the thing that we haven't yet seen be super sticky. Um, maybe maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Like, what does it take to get there? How do you get people invested to the point where they actually do care? And like, you have people building wikis and you have people getting tattoos and you have fan art and cosplay and like all of the, the UGC comes in and like what does that what does that take to do that?
Yeah, I mean, you already see a ton of that within the Ronin ecosystem. And, that was actually basically how we kicked off Axie. People getting tattoos, making musicals, doing UGC, they were doing that before the game even existed. And that's how we knew that something special was happening. Uh, People will do that because they feel like they're owners and part of a movement, part of something greater than themselves. Loneliness is the number one bull market in the world. People are getting increasingly lonely over time, and they're spending more of their time online. So, these a lot of the emotion will stem from people feeling like they're part of something greater than themselves. Uh, in a lot of games where you basically have these huge real money economies, a lot of that is driven by whales who are the guild leaders and feel like, hey, I want my guild to be number one. I have a duty to the people that I'm leading, the people who are in my guild, to provide the financial resources necessary for us to be the top. Some people within Sky Mavis, right? They are this type of archetype of player in mobile games, right? They're the guild leader. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, sustaining these types of guild operations. And yeah, I think that will happen. Um, People already feel really emotional about games in the Ronin ecosystem, about Axie. I think it's just about, yeah, like it's just about letting it mature. And of course, the perfect type of game for this is MMOs, right? And it's only been a few years since Web3 gaming has been introduced as a concept. And so we're starting to see like the first wave of MMOs start to launch, games like Forgotten Universe, Lumiterra, um, Cambria, right? So these are some of the MMOs that are on Ronin. We just obviously announced that Axie MMO. So it takes some time for this type of stuff to cook.
Now a word from our sponsors.
What's up, crypto gamers? Shout out to our sponsor, Myria. Myria is revolutionizing Ethereum-based gaming with its powerful L2 scaling solution. Think zero gas fees, instant transactions, free NFT minting, and more. Myria offers a suite of tools that are tailor-built for game development, including game-specific SDKs, a spec'd-out marketplace, Web3 spiked leaderboards, new AI super tools, and more. All this fueled by a fleet of player-run nodes that are a breeze to operate and pump out daily rewards for supporting the ecosystem. Plus, check out Meta Rush, the Battle Royale obstacle runner by Myria Studios, dropping very, very soon.
Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
I'm glad you mentioned the MMO. I think there's a big like memory gap or history gap that a lot of crypto gaming has between sort of the peak and fall off of Axie and where Axie is today. So first I want to ask a specific question, and then I'd love if you could fill in that gap for people between after the really big like blow off top in Axie and then how we got here today. But first, a very specific I think, very underspoken and underappreciated topic in our space, which is treasury management. So when Axie was blowing up, you mentioned Ronin was taking in tons of fees, money was coming in hand over fist. So what decisions did you guys make in that sort of peak euphoria with in regard to treasury management that enabled you guys to survive the bear that came after it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we had a ton of traction, and we're able to raise funds from VCs. VCs get a lot of flack, but actually, raising money from VCs prevents you from having to dump your tokens on the market. Um, and they typically get like really long lockup terms and stuff like that, or they might even just invest in equity that basically doesn't get the token until a really long time. So I think obviously you always want to raise capital from a position of strength when you have a lot of leverage, and that's something that Alex and Jung from our team, they're really quick and decisive on deciding, hey, like we're doing really well, let's raise some funds. And of course, we're also really frugal. We're out in Vietnam where things are cheaper as well. That's where our like main HQ and office is. So you want to be frugal, and you want to basically raise when you have maximum leverage. So you don't have, there are a lot of teams that are running out of money right now, and now they're forced to raise, and it's like literally it's not a founder's market for raising; it's a buyer's market. Because well, also so few funds actually even have capital to deploy right now. So yeah, you have to, when you're a founder, you have to be in understanding of momentum, like when you have it, when you don't have it. And I think a lot of inexperienced founders, when things are going well, they feel invincible. Like, oh, like, yeah, we don't need money. Like, we're just gonna keep growing and growing forever. But these things happen in cycles, fits and starts. You're not gonna just right. Literally, the most stupid thing about crypto is like people always think that whatever is happening now will happen indefinitely into the future, right? It's like what happened with meme coins. I felt like I was the only person in the world arguing with Murad, saying, "Hey, bro, like just because you're saying that utility is done right now, and people aren't recognizing it now, doesn't mean that will always be the case in the future." And yeah, like literally, like I said that at basically the top of all the at the top of all the stuff on his list, right? And everyone thought that he was a god. But yeah, there's always a moment for something in crypto where you feel invincible, and stuff rotates, right? And we just make higher lows over time, and the tech just takes it takes some time to progress. For me, all of this has grown a lot faster than I initially ever dreamed. And so I just think back to, when I was playing CryptoKitties, when I was in our office with 5 or 6 people. If you told me about, that back then that, hey, in, 7 years, you're going to have 300,000 people playing Axie, right? You're going to have your own chain, and there's going to be 1.8 million people using it. That chain is going to be worth, $1 billion. Axie is going to be worth around $1 billion, and Bitcoin's going to be at 90K. Even right, ETH being at 2K. Would you take that? Always, I would have fucking taken it. I would have been mind blown. I would have fallen out of my chair. So always we get like used to the current thing, and we want more, we want more, we want more. That's human nature. But that's always like a mental exercise to play. Is like if you go back 10 years, 7 years, and tell your past self about what's going on right now, would you take it? People who have been in the space for 7 years, I guarantee all of them would take the current situation. Maybe not the ETH, maybe not the ETH thing, but I mean, 7 years ago, ETH was $100, right? I remember buying ETH at $72. It's like 2K, and people are like crying, right? Including like myself. It's like annoying, right? But yeah, that's the type of perspective that's needed.
Well, I'm also really glad you mentioned the frugality point as well, because there's such a pull, I think, for crypto space. Anytime when like money comes in so fast, people have a huge temptation to send it out the door so fast. And I actually think that's one of the main values of going to IRL events is I can usually with a higher percentage accuracy than by going off stuff on crypto Twitter, you can see how people throw a party for their event and quickly gauge up like if they're going to run out of money or not during the bear. I'll throw some shade on them because I think they deserve having shade thrown on them. But I walked into the Steady Stack party and I was like, oh yeah, this is going to zero. Because it was at, I was talking to the party planner and she was like, yeah, they hit me with $1 million budget 2 weeks ago and was like, hey, let's like blow this out. And then I went to the Toads party and it was like at a little gaming cafe and like, there were really dedicated community members there. And it was like, a couple drink tickets as opposed to like open bar. So that's like one like place that I think you can really get a feel for like how frugal a company is. But to put that aside, I'd love if you could catch people up from sort of the big blow off top on Axie to the present now of like launching the MMO. Like what was that journey like? What are the big like highlights that people might not know?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much waste in crypto. Like, it's almost like, there's a masochistic side of me that likes all pain because although it may be happening to us, the teams that are irresponsible are feeling it even more. Uh, you know, there's a I always think about like two words: resilience and anti-fragility, right? So a lot of people are like, yeah, we need to be resilient. We need to be resilient. But that's kind of like very passive. You're just withstanding some crazy stuff that's happening to you. I think about becoming anti-fragile. When you're anti-fragile, all pain and suffering causes you to grow and improve yourself, right? And I think that's really what's happened, right? Obviously, we've been through so much as a community that we have unbreakable bonds that make it really hard for anything really to phase us too much. So I think that's a crazy part of our community. That's why I really recommend coming to hang out in the Ronin Discord, the Axie Discord. You're gonna see like a battle-hardened group of warriors, of basically stoic philosophers who have been through so much, who have experienced crazy highs, experienced the lowest of lows, and have made really great friends. And that's also the case when it comes to Sky Mavis, right? Like we've learned a lot of hard lessons. We've really been forged in fire, and I think we've become really good at understanding how to operate in different market environments, right? Like we're blessed, maybe unfair that we've had 7 years. And some of these founders, yeah, maybe they're being irresponsible or whatever. But maybe, they're kind of new to the space, so they don't really know, or, and stuff like that. Right. But I mean, it's the hardest thing in crypto is being early and being experienced. But you don't want to be too early or experienced, because that's why I feel like class of 2017, 2018 is like the best perfect class to be in, right? Because you're not so early that you like just became like really rich off of Bitcoin and kind of demotivated, and you're kind of a little bit too old to have the energy needed to create a startup. Um, and you're not like, but yeah, like 2021, it's like you've kind of dealt with mostly like hard market environments other than 2021, right? So I feel like class of 2017, 2018 is like the best class to be in, because you're a veteran, but you're not too jaded and you're not too rich. And you have seen both, right? Like multiple bear markets and also like multiple good times.
Well, as as a class of 2021 or myself, I'm out here to, you know, rep for this class and show you that we still got some stuff. We can still do it. Also the anti-fragility thing that immediately made me think of the Sword of Gryffindor. It only takes in that which makes it stronger, which is just super badass and definitely the way to be. Also, I, I want to talk a little bit about the future. And if you would indulge me for 2 minutes, I want to lay out a thesis, and I would love if you could poke holes in this where you see it wrong. So I think as time goes on, AI is going to replace knowledge workers, and it may take time, whatever, but anything that people do on the internet, ostensibly, AI should be able to eventually do that better than human beings. I think that same thing will run that back physically with robots, and like plumbing, housekeeping, cleaning, blah, 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 should be able to be done by robots at some point in time. So, ostensibly, within a matter of years, decades, whatever, human beings will cease to be working creatures by default because robots and AI will handle all of that stuff. In that world, we will have free time. And when human beings have free time, we default to entertainment and consumption, and the dominant form of entertainment is gaming. Ostensibly, then, as AI and robots become more advanced and can handle more of the labor, human beings will spend more time in digital worlds playing games. Where's that right? Where's that
Yeah.
wrong?
You're basically directionally correct. And this is something that we were saying since 2020, 2021, before AI blew up. One of my friends, or some of my friends, are really early employees at OpenAI. So I've been thinking about the singularity since 2008, 2009. That was one of the topics that me and my boys in high school, I went to boarding school, so we would stay up until 5 a.m. talking about the future. And my friends were much smarter than me. Like, they're math champions, right? They're one of my best friends was one of the first 2 or 3 engineers at OpenAI. So yeah, that's, some people think of that as a dystopian future. I think of that as freedom, where you don't have to, you're not forced to work. And I believe that in the future, AI will basically create this bountiful future where a lot of the problems that we currently have are not going to be right a thing. And the main problem that humans will face is, okay, like, how do I live a meaningful life, and what do
Purpose.
I do for purpose? And I'm lonely, like, right, like, so to me, like, one of the big sources of value that a human will provide in the future is they can be a source of human connection, right? Like, people are not gonna be able to, you don't, most people, like, the last thing that a human being will be disrupted at is basically human connection, right? People are, maybe, like, there's gonna be all right, like, some people who are able to bond with robots and have emotional connections with them, right? Like, that's still, like, gonna be one of the later things that happens, and that human to human connection is gonna be one of the last sources of value that humans have. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Being a good friend, being a good family member, being a good guild mate. These are some of the things, right? Like, that humans will just be able to focus on in the future, and there will be ways of them capturing that value, right?
So does then betting on gaming early expose you to that inevitability, or are we too early for that? Like, what's the timeline of, like, maybe not product market fit? I think gaming already has product market fit. It's just about finding the right type of product you want to build. But, like, I think understanding of the market of, like, investor market fit, if that makes sense for that narrative.
Mm. It's hard to talk timing, but we saw when COVID happened. I believe that was a glimpse into the future. And I do think that we're in a bull market for loneliness and the need for human connection. I do believe that gaming is a great way to get exposure to this. I also see, like, real application, when we talk about real applications of crypto, we're talking about DeFi, we're talking about gaming. And I believe that, one of the problems with utility and real applications of the tech is that, Ethereum is not doing well right now, right? But I believe that we have seen a change in the air over the last 2 weeks. The Ethereum Foundation turned over its leadership. Danny Ryan went to Etherealize, which is basically kind of like the second foundation, which is going to be focused on onboarding institutional capital. So yeah, I know, like, this is all, I think, like, Becker also has been, kind of waiting for this sort of alt slash utility season. And I believe that now that the Solana trenches are cooked, like, people are going to be looking, right. It's now like cringe to be nihilistic, right? People are looking for something to believe in, and people are looking for real applications of the technology. That's exactly what happened last cycle after Elon went on Saturday Night Live, right? We talked about this, right? Like, so from that moment where Elon went on and tried to shill Doge and Doge crashed, people were looking for real applications of the tech, and that's where we got, like, the golden age of NFTs, the golden age of Web3 gaming, the golden age of Ethereum, right? Where it went from I think 1,200 to 4,800 within a 8-month cycle, within a month, 8-month window. So that's what I'll be looking for. And I believe that that will happen. I believe that in order for Web3 to work, that is what must happen. And if it doesn't happen, right, like in the next couple of years, it might be that we're dealing with a situation kind of like the Nasdaq boom, right, where it's like an extended thing. But over time, I believe that Web3 is inevitable because governments are corrupt and free markets always win over unfree markets.
So trenches are cooked. Things are taking longer than we want. I think a significant amount of the timeline is just super fucking poor right now. And they're all in on Web3, and this is like kind of this is their thing, right? For those that don't have the nest egg, they don't have savings backed up. They're working every day to put, food on the table. They're in Web3. They're totally cooked. They're trying to figure it out, but they still want to contribute. They believe. What's your advice to them? How do they keep going? Like, do they go drive Uber or whatever on the side? Like, how do they stick it out?
For sure. I mean, this happened to me because I was class in 2017. I joined at the top or whatever, and I started working on Axie, and ETH went from $1,400 to $80, $100. Our company treasury was all in ETH. I didn't get paid for 3 months at a time, so I literally have been there, and so some things that help, right, is like, yeah, I mean, finding a source of alternative income can help. Yeah, like driving Uber for sure. Like you're gonna need to find like some source of cash flow by any means, and that's also gonna be able to buy you the dip. If you're driving Uber for $10 an hour, I don't know, like, that sounds low, right? Maybe $15-$20 an hour, and then crypto 10x's, you're actually making $150 an hour, right? On the other side, right? It's like any money that you spend is also like 10x, right? So find ways to get some small source of revenue stream, and also cut down your expenses. Move to Vietnam or move to Southeast Asia. That was helpful for me because food is literally $1 or $2. It was $1 back then. Now it's $2. So food is like $2 per meal in Asia, right? So find a way to get out there. America is expensive, right? America is an expensive place to be poor. It's actually poorer. It's actually more expensive if you're poor in America than if you have some money.
Yeah, I'd also add on that I think that our space is like chronically like has a chronic deficit in like talent and reliable people. So I think there's, especially at this point where people get really jaded and like there's a big sort of impulse to like draw away, and a lot of people end up doing it. We're seeing it certainly on like some teams that I have like insight to, and that's the perfect opportunity to put yourself out there, be like, hey, this is something that's not getting done. I'll happily do this. Maybe you're doing that for free, in between Uber rides. But if you can prove your value like now while things are a little bit like bearish, then when those teams get funds, you'll be right there at the front of the line of like, okay, hey, this is someone who in the bad times was reliable. And like the number one way you can differentiate yourself to crypto companies as an entry level person is just do what you say you're gonna do. The bar is so low.
It's integrity, right? Like that's one of the things that we always say is like we do what we say we're gonna do, and that is the definition of integrity. How did I get my? So I didn't say this or talk about this during my intro, but I wasn't the original guy who came up with the idea for Axie. I discovered Axie like everyone else did as a community member, and I was like, hey, like this team has a lot of potential. I understand the concept of this project. The art is really good. I believe that this team can pull it off. I'm going to help them get to the next level. I'm going to help them communicate and share their vision. I'm going to help them onboard people. And I'm not going to ask for a job up front. I'm just going to start doing the work and see what happens. Right. I'll do it for a couple of weeks. If they get it, great. Let's get to the next level. If they don't get it, then I'll move on to the next one. Right. But don't like be like, hey, right. Like a lot of people reach out to me and they're like, hey, like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Is like, well, have you been doing it? Right. Always like the most effective pitch to me is like, hey, I've been doing this and I want to continue doing it, but it has to make sense for me and my family. It has to make sense when I would do it for free, but my girlfriend, my wife, my mom, my parents, right? I have to be able to justify to them that I'm spending so much time helping or working on this thing. So that's always the framing, in my opinion.
So we're coming close to time here. Want to be very respectful of everybody's time. Maybe you could rapid fire some timeless principles or life alpha that you live by, the audience could take away with them. Doesn't have to be crypto, could be whatever. Like what things have helped you get to where you are?
One is like, if you want to build connections with people, you need to get really good at asking questions to them. And especially, right, like if you're unknown or something like that, right? Like there might be like a tendency to want to like just talk about yourself, right? But for me, what I found is that asking the right questions is one of the biggest life hacks of all time, right? That's also like in terms of managing people and leading people. You don't want to be commanding people. You want to be asking questions that guide them to the solution, right? The question is the answer. For me, like seeking out difficult experiences, seeking out pain, seeking out opportunities to become anti-fragile. A lot of people, they want to seek comfort, right? They don't actually want to live a hard life or get to the next level. They don't want to grow. So for me, like being able to seek out growth opportunities and being okay to experience some pain. Um, right, like for me, moving to Vietnam, I moved to Vietnam. I gave my dog to my parents. Broke up with my girlfriend at the time. Right, I was seeking an opportunity to become more resilient. I was okay with some potential pain, and I went through that. Hmm. As an entrepreneur, I think the hardest thing is getting your first 100 to 1,000 customers, and that is a little bit more like sales than marketing. So that's the kind of the weird thing is in the beginning, you're not doing marketing. You're writing articles or whatever. You don't have any channels yet, right? So whenever you start a business, right, like your first 100 customers, your first 1,000 customers, you're going to have to know them yourself, right? Um, and so getting to your first 1,000 true fans, I think this is like basically if you can figure out how to do that for one business, you probably can do it for anything you ever start in your life. So my background, when I graduated college, I wanted to do like a telemarketing, kind of like a telemarketing job. I was like something where I have to be on the phone, like shilling, like getting people interested in what I'm doing really quickly. I need to be able to do that. So I became a recruiter, right? So I was messaging people on LinkedIn, hey, I got a role for you. I had a 50% response rate, which is like crazy. I think the typical one is like 10%. So I was able to hone my craft of doing an outreach message and getting them to take action and hop on a call with me. And it took me a lot of time to be able to have these calls to get them interested, right? To kind of hook them. But once I figured it out, and it was also really cool. Like I was able to meet so many awesome people that then somehow like ended up being connected to crypto in some way because I was recruiting people for hedge funds, right? So I was finding a lot of like super smart people to work at hedge funds. I was meeting a lot of really cool people, and I was learning how to tell my story really quickly. And so yeah, that might be a thing too for like young people. Like figure out how to almost manually onboard and sell people, because if you can do that, then you're going to be really useful for either being able to start a business yourself or being able to help someone else start a business, right? Because always I would say one of the biggest issues is getting your first 1,000 users, customers, whatever, right? Because that's more of a manual process and that's less about marketing and that's more about like direct sales, recruiting.
Such gold, such golden nuggets. I also just want to add in one that some of the real alpha are the friends you make along the way. And so thank you for coming on and being our friend today and sharing some of your very valuable time, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been great. Just want to reiterate, everyone sign up for the new Axie Infinity MMO. You can check that out at axieinfinity.com. There's a ref link as well, so make sure to get your friends and family to join. Ronin just opened up, so keep an eye on Ronin. I think we have some of the best games in all of Web3 gaming: Fableborn, Lumiterra, things like Cambria, A Forgotten Runiverse, Ragnarok Online. So keep an eye on Ronin, and I'm really excited to do more stuff with Neo Tokyo as well.
Bullish.
Yeah, we're definitely excited for that. Thank you so much again for your time, Ben. Always an absolute pleasure to be co-hosting with you, and we will be back next week with another episode. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye bye.